Hello, good evening, good afternoon,
And
good morning, wherever you are. Hi, welcome to RT Squared. My name is Toaster from Aussie 8, and I'm joined by my co-host today from Melbourne. Hey Ron, how you going? Just continue on.
hey,
So on
Toaster,
today, hey
nice
Ron, sorry,
and
did you,
bright outside in your side of the world.
so you can see that I'm out, out and about. We're actually in WA, so in lovely Horrocks. And I am coming to you today live from this Starlink, which is down here on the grass. So if there's a bit of a delay or whatever, that's we can blame SpaceX or Starlink, I think. But yeah, how are you going in Melbourne, Ron?
Yeah,
Or
we're
maybe
doing good. It's Melbourne Cup Eve today, so tomorrow is public holiday for all Victorian listeners today.
very good. So on our agenda today, we're going to talk about. You mentioned Victoria, Ron. We're going to talk about the Victorian EV tax. I guess it's been in the news recently. And we're also going to talk about charging options. But Ron, I think you also had a couple of other things you wanted to talk about, some ships maybe coming into port.
Yes, that's true. So one of them, I think Glovis caravel was delayed, but I think it's scheduled to arrive today or next few days. But what's key takeaway there is that there are few more hundreds of new EV owners across Australia. And I guess a portion of them would be so happy because if they're from Victoria, they don't have to pay that insane tax, just like me. That's a big win. That's one of our topics today, Rich. But yeah, lots of new EV owners with it
Yeah.
in Australia.
Yep. All right. Well, before we jump into that topic, I guess news on my front is finally crossed 100 subscribers on YouTube. So my fledgling channel is getting there, which is good. Certainly getting some views on my videos about remote charging. So I think it'll be good for us to cover charging in a bit more detail today.
Yep. And your Franken Starlink. What do you call it?
Yeah, I guess
It's
I think you
getting a
gave
lot
it.
of
You
views.
gave. Yeah, I think you gave it that name. The Starlink here is the one that I don't touch because that's the one
The
that
real thing.
the coach and the rest of us use for real internet. Dare not touch that one.
Yeah. And also, just touching upon your milestone in terms of YouTube 100 subs. Back in our days, 100 sub is actually a milestone because you can choose your own handle instead of having the random alphanumeric character, like I think 15 or 20 random alphanumeric character. You can actually pick a handle name that's the same as your channel name. So it was a big deal back then, but these days YouTube is just giving it away. But still,
Yeah,
100,
sure. Thank you.
triple digits. Hold on.
Thank you. All right, so maybe we should move on to our first agenda item then, is that Victorian EV road tax. And I guess being a Victorian,
Yes.
maybe this will be a good one for you to talk to, Ron.
Well, I can feel my pocket not $616 lighter. That's all I can say. I did 22,000 kilometers in the past year, so that equates to about 600-ish or so. Um, so that's money that I don't have to pay,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess a lot of questions will be asked or is being asked, well, what happens to me? I'm a Victorian. I've had a car for more than 12 months now. I'm due to pay this. What do I do? I think the advice that was given was that if you have an invoice that's already due, you have to pay. You have to settle that invoice. But if you're one of the lucky few who maybe on the 11th month of their EV ownership before, 1 month before or a few days before, I think the date was 18th of October is when they passed the judgment. So if your registration is due before then and you haven't received anything, I think what Vic Rose is saying is probably you won't probably get an invoice. So that's good. Spend that $600 somewhere else. Maybe do a road trip. But yeah, something that you don't have to pay. And for those who are new EV owners, again, you don't have to worry about that dreaded.
Okay. Sounds really good. I guess maybe for our live viewers, but also those watching the recording, it might be worth actually just going over the Victorian EV tax. So from my understanding, not being a Victorian, is that
Yes.
the Victorian government decided that they wanted to introduce a tax for EVs on the road. And I mean, I think as road users, we know that we have to pay some sort of tax, right? And today, for petrol or ICE cars, that tax is collected as a fuel excise when you go and fill up at the Bowser. And so as we transition from petrol cars to electric cars, governments are looking for ways to collect the revenue, I guess, to maintain the roads, and that's fair enough, right? I mean, you can't expect to drive on the roads for free. I think though it's just about the way they went about it. The federal government collect the fuel excise, and the reason they do that is because we drive all over the place, right? Some of us live on the border between Victoria and New South Wales, and if we cross that border, who are we paying the tax to and who's collecting it? So it makes more sense that it is a federal matter and that the feds collect it. And I guess at some point they will come up with a scheme, assuming that the High Court decision, which struck down the Victorian state government collecting the tax, presuming that stands, and the feds will come in at some point and start a road tax, I guess, for EV users. And I think at that point, it'll be consistent across the country and should make a lot more sense, right?
Yeah, that's right, and it's consistent for everyone, regardless of what vehicle you drive. Because right now, as you can see, the government has collected $13.7 billion from fuel excise, and 60% of that was used for, or roughly 60% of that was used for road improvements from the last financial year. It's a lot of money to lose, especially I think the number of EVs that are being sold in Australia has skyrocketed, and to some degree, some of the ICE vehicles, categories of ICE vehicles, are declining in sales. So there'll be a point where the federal government will start to feel the pinch that they're losing money. 13.7 billion is a lot. And I'm not sure whether everyone's aware, but yeah, federal government collects 48.8 cents per liter of fuel as fuel excise, and yeah, they use that all sorts of ways, and yeah, it's a federal thing, and that's the reason why the EV road tax from Victoria was abolished, because it's not meant to be collected by the state; it's meant to be collected by Commonwealth. And I actually prepared something here that sort of, I guess the other thing I want to discuss was if you're a plug-in hybrid vehicle owner, you actually
and there's plenty of those around, right?
yeah, they're actually worse off because I mean they're still pumping fuel, and their car is probably more than half the time using the combustion engine, but they're getting charged either way. So they're paying fuel excise, they're paying road tax, EV road tax, and yeah, and they can't challenge it. They just have to pay, I think, 2.3 cents for every kilometer they travel. I think I did a sort of a short comparison. Let me just show this here of how much I guess the main thing I want to show here is that if we adopt the EV road charge per kilometer of driven, if that means if your car is fuel efficient or battery efficient, you get charged more. Whereas it's sort of it's counterproductive. Well, my car is more efficient. You should reward me for that, not charge me. So just an illustration here, 10 liters per 100 kilometer of, I guess, fuel efficiency. That was actually my car before this. And that's, if I pump in 10 liters of fuel, I spend $20, assuming, $2 per liter. I get charged, I have to pay, well, including that would be the $4.88 in fuel excise. So all of these guys in all these scenarios pay this much in fuel excise. But if your car is not as efficient, just like this guy, I mean, this guy is actually the equivalent fuel efficiency.
So you're talking about the guy that's
EV.
10. You're talking about the guy, the top one, 10 liters per 100 kilometers.
Yeah. So if you're not fuel efficient, the most you can do with 10 liters of fuel is 100 kilometers. And you pay $4.88 because you've already paid that at the Bowser. And this is that fuel excise, right? I bought something, I paid something. And if your car is, twice as efficient, you get twice as far. That means if we calculate that in the same way the EV road tax is calculated, you pay this much per kilometer of travel, $4.88. And towards the end of the spectrum here is the I guess the equivalent fuel excise that electric cars should be charged, because this is how efficient it is, and that's how much distance we've covered for that same amount of fuel. But they didn't do it this way. They charge a flat rate, 2.8 cents per kilometer. So in this case, this guy would have been charged more than these guys, because I've covered more. That's why it's unfair, because I mean, if your car is efficient, you get charged more because you can cover more distance. So there has to be a way. I think the closest one that would probably reflect how fuel excise gets charged with ICE vehicles would be to charge, I don't know, an electricity excise when you charge your car. But that's probably one of the
I think maybe I think in terms of there's many different options that I've seen as well, but maybe we should leave that for another day. It's still obviously early days in terms of what the federal government here are likely to do. But so I guess the good news for Victorians. And
good news for now.
Good news for now. That's right.
For now, yeah.
All right. So maybe it's time to move on to our other main topic for today. What do you think?
Yes. I think what are we talking about, Rich? I think this is at the heart of every EV owner out there. What do we do with charging? How do we charge a car?
It's one of the questions I always get. Besides, how far do you go? That's one of probably the first questions. The second one is, where do you charge it? How do you charge it? And I think we've put together a few slides here. They're mostly just pictures, but maybe if you can put them up as well, Ron, because they're kind of useful talking points for me. But I think the way that I see it is there's essentially 4 categories of sort of broad categories of charging. So we'll go through those here. And the first one is at home. And so this is what I'm calling private charging. So at home, you typically have two types of charging available: trickle charging, which is your slower charging from regular power points or maybe from a 15 amp socket, and then fast AC, which is where you would have an electrician come in and you'd probably use a dedicated circuit and some sort of charger maybe mounted on the wall, as the sort of two main choices that people have for home charging, for private charging. So this type of charging supports short to medium distances. It's really good for commuting. If you commute the average distance that an Australian does, this kind of charging is more than sufficient for you. It does take a little while, but the idea is that you plug your car in while you're sleeping, and then in the morning, hopefully your car is fully charged again after your whatever you've done the day before, and you're good to go again. There are some issues though that come up with home charging. That is, as more and more people convert to EVs, what's the load going to be like on the grid? The grid right now seems to have an oversupply of electricity during the middle of the day with solar, but not so much at night. So if people are charging at night, where's that electricity coming from? Is it batteries or some other source that is efficient at storing electricity overnight? So again, that's a big topic. I'm not going to go into that today. But anyway, so at a high level, there's the load on the grid. But also many houses, if you are going to have a dedicated wall charger installed, do they have the wiring? Is their electricity board suited to it? It may become a costly exercise for some people to get that kind of charging set up at home.
Yeah, and that's where probably they'll, especially the new owners, that's where they'll spend that $600 of savings. They don't have to give at least for the Victorians, because when I did set up my garage, I don't have any power point in the garage. That's the first thing. So I had an electrician just install a 15 amp socket, which is enough for my use because I don't do a lot of road trips or long drives. It's mainly school bus for my kids. So really short drives every day. And I just trickle charge once all those school pickup and drop-offs are done. And then it's fully charged the next day.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to bring up the pictures and the slides? Because I think it actually shows our actual charging setups in our houses, right?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to find where those files are. But you go. I think it's on the other laptop. So maybe
it's all good. Yeah, so in our setups, I had a wall charger, so that I had an electrician come in and install a dedicated circuit and had a wall charger. And Ron, you had a granny charger, a trickle charger, but you still had to get, you had an electrician come in to put in a 15 amp socket so you could get a slightly faster charging speed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the 15 amp charger, I get roughly 20 to 25 kilometers per hour of charge, which is enough for me. I plug it in for maybe 6 to 8 hours, so recoup the range that I lost throughout the maybe 2 or 3 days of use. So like I said, I don't charge it every day because it's very little usage, and whenever I charge it full to 100%. Just what Tesla recommends. I did try to play around with, because what they said before was that what even though you have an LFP battery, it's still healthy if you charge it to 80 or 90% on a regular basis, and then once a week you do 100%. I tried doing that, and then I at the end of like maybe 5 or 6 cycles, the range estimate was has decreased by a lot. I think to 415. But I mean, a lot of people are saying don't worry about the remaining range. But I mean, I I do. What about you? How's your? Do you worry about, or do you monitor the remaining
I've
range?
I've I've stopped doing that, and I did a video on my channel where I actually turned it off. I just follow the percentage because, again, on road trips, that it's really a guessometer, right? Especially out where we are, it's just not worth using. So percentage is what I use in the car, and that means that it only ever goes. It starts at 100 and it goes down to 0.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. I need to teach
So
myself that.
yeah, it gets rid of a lot of range anxiety, even out when we're on these road trips. Just turning it to percentage, you just treat it like a phone. All right, so
Yes.
maybe moving on here. So the other category that we have is still charging either at home, but I've introduced the apartment because they're a special case, and also some people will want to charge at work rather than at home for whatever reason. So this second category, still it's the same charging options. It's still trickle charging or fast AC, and it supports the same type of commute style to and from work or to and from home. But again, still the pros are you're either doing it while you're sleeping or you're doing it while you're working. But in this case, because it's either an apartment or a workspace, it's going to have to be shared. So that means that somebody's got to take responsibility for installing it, and then also maintaining it, and deciding if it is going to charge people for usage, how to charge them, what system to do that on. So there's all of that aspect, which complicates the whole apartment block work charging system. So but then there's also the issues there. Sorry, Ron, you wanted to jump in?
Oh no, just wanna, because I read there was a news article today that came out in New South Wales. They've introduced, I think, a way for, yes, shared charging in townhouses, apartment blocks, and stuff, to have a, like, sort of a common fund that's supported by the New South Wales government to install those, yes, shared charging facilities. So that's good. I think. Yeah, I don't know how much, but yeah, it's a good win for EV
Yeah, it's a
owners,
good
because
start.
I'm sure a lot of owners are sort of, in that kind of accommodation, they want to get an EV, but they don't have a way to charge it, so it makes it difficult. So with this
Yeah,
move, yeah, good on New South Wales
yeah,
to
it's definitely going to need the help
support that.
of governments, corporations, body corporates to solve this one. A
Yeah,
couple of other issues that I thought of in the space is the typical one that we have today with more sort of fast charging situations is if it's oversubscribed. So that means that 3 people turn up and there's only 2 spots. Obviously you've got to take turns. How does that
charging
work?
etiquette.
Charging etiquette,
Yeah.
but also even worse, you've finished charging or your car has finished charging, you're not there, and now somebody wants to jump in, but your car is
Oh,
parked there.
yep, yep,
So again, maybe there's a way to move the charging cord, unplug it from that car, because typically they're actually locked to the car to stop
yep,
people from actually either stealing the cables or walking, or actually stopping you from charging. So yeah, there's
yep.
definitely going to be some things to work out there as well. If there's more people that want to charge than there are charging
Yeah.
spots.
Have you been in situations where there's no available charging stations for you to use, or you have um, uh, like you left your car, but then someone was left a note in your car, move your car? Or, have you come across that situation? Because you're doing a lot of road trips. I think in my ownership, I've done maybe 4,000 kilometers of road trip, compared to 22,000 total kilometers of use. So not a lot, but I haven't come across any of those situations where, yeah, I argue with other EV owners. It's
No, I
always
mean
free.
I've Yeah, I mean, I have turned up in a few places, but this was more when we were doing road trips on the East Coast. But out here on the remote parts, it's a very different situation. And in fact, I'll come to that as a separate category in a minute. But on the East Coast, I mean, there was occasionally we'd turn up and maybe we'd have to wait 5 minutes at Goulburn. Well, maybe, I don't know, there has been some situations. And certainly in the news, right, I think like at peak times, Christmas, school holidays, there has been some queuing and congestion that I've seen, especially on Tesla ones on major highways like Goulburn. So it does happen, and it will, it will happen.
Oh yeah, especially for you. Will you be on road trip during the Christmas holiday period? Or are you gonna
Yeah,
be
we'll definitely be.
Yep.
Yeah, it will be in WA, traveling around WA, which maybe then I think brings us to this third category, which is on the road, which is what we're doing. And this is where you have access to fast DC. So this is like the superchargers or your EV network. What are the other networks, Ron? There's ChargeFox,
ChargeFox. Yep. And I think a lot of
NR,
even conventional
NRMA,
petrol stations. Yep.
mm-hmm.
BP and
NRMA,
Ampol,
Ampol.
they've started to roll out their own stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So this is obviously great for your trips, your long trips. You can actually, if you do it right, and if you're an ICE car driver that stops every 2 or 3 hours to have a break, you can travel pretty great distances using fast DC charging, almost to where it's comparable to a petrol car. So that's the good side to fast DC. So all of us EV owners are wanting to see fast DC roll out across the country, right?
Yeah. But also, I guess there's also shared, especially if it's is that a V2 superchargers where you have to know which charging station you need to use if what the other EV owner is charging this set of chargers, don't use the other one, don't use the same line, something along those lines, because it sort of um, divides the available power across those vehicles.
Yeah,
Like I
I've
said,
certainly
I
seen.
haven't come across those things.
Yeah, no, I have come across it. I've seen my charge rate, decline as somebody plugs in next to me. So I have definitely seen that with the older superchargers. But even the V3 ones, and maybe because there's now V4 coming out, there's still a max but it's shared across more stations. So it's not as lumpy, but it still happens if everybody plugged in, even to a V3 or V4. I think there'd still be some sharing, or there'd be some reduction in the charge rate.
Yep.
So even though it's all rosy with fast DC, there are still some issues there. You still need to plan. It's not like a petrol car where you can just jump in your car and go. You do need to think, well, where is there a charging stop? Because they're not pervasive. They are getting better, but they're not pervasive. Some infrastructure is not reliable. And I'm looking at Tritium in particular. Unfortunate that it's an Aussie company that should have really, looked like they were going to take off and really do good things. But the reliability of their hardware is woeful. I don't know if they've improved it, but yeah, I've come across plenty of Tritium chargers that have been broken, and it's not a good look when you're on a road trip.
Do they OEM those chargers? Because I know EV uses if you look at the actual charging station, it's got Tritium
Yeah, so
brand
there are.
written all over it.
Yeah, so it's a Brisbane-based company, is my understanding. I think they are listed on NASDAQ or whatever. So they had big things, and maybe they still do. But I do know that they are struggling and have been in the news because I think one of them is about the reliability of their hardware. Anyway, that's probably again a topic for another day. But I think the last thing that's kind of a big issue here is just the inconsistency. So different networks have different apps. They've got different signups. The way you register your credit card on each of them is different. So it's all, and you've got a multitude of apps installed on your phone. And you're also often carrying around a fistful of RFID cards. because sometimes
Oh,
your
which
phone
you can actually share the same RFID card across two accounts.
you can,
So I
yeah.
found out just now. But also, yeah, I mean, different apps, even EV, the company EV, they recently changed their app. I found out the hard way because I don't do a lot of road trips, and last time I used it, they're still using an old app. And then when I rocked up the charger, they said, "Oh, you don't have an app that's associated with your account," and I had to spend the next 5 minutes trying to set it up again. But once you set it
Yeah,
up, for me, once you set it up, it's all okay. But it's just that it's
yeah,
not
but it's still, I mean,
seamless.
I've
Yeah,
seen those apps log you out, or I've been in like basements of buildings and you've got no reception, so you really do need to use an RFID card. So it's not, there's still, yeah, it's not like a petrol situation where you just rock up to the Bowser and you pull the handle and you've got some petrol. So they definitely need to work on that. And I do know from like some news in the States that some of the funding that's coming from the federal government mandates certain experiences and behaviors expected of the charging equipment to make it easier for the end user. So I would definitely laud that. All right. So moving on here, the final category I have, and that's the one that I'm in. Well, actually, I'm on the cusp here because we've just left remote parts of WA and we're kind of heading towards Perth, and so the fast charging is starting to open up. But when we're in the more remote parts, that final category is, where there is no fast DC charging, and then you have to revert back to the fast AC charging, which you'd normally only use at home. But here out in the bush, you have to use it to complete your trip. And so that just means that you're spending many hours in the middle of the day charging, with fast AC. And I've done videos
entertaining
on that. So
journey.
that's the idea. Yep. So this final category needs heaps of planning. There's often only one 3-phase socket at a roadhouse, so you need to make sure that you can use it. Nobody else is using it. You've brought along the right cables. So yeah, lots of planning, and it really does restrict. It really does restrict your driving for a day. Basically, you're max out at 500 kilometers on with that kind of charging.
Yeah, and then speaking of charging equipment, I remember, I was also in the same boat. I guess for those guys who are uh, getting their EV, what sort of charging equipment? So I think I spent about $500 in charging equipment, and I actually never used any of them. The only thing I used was the extension lead when I was charging at a campsite, because the 15 amp socket was further down and I can't get the car close enough. That is the only charging equipment that actually I have used. I've bought 3-phase sockets. I've bought the Type 2 to Type 2, and I've never used any of them to this day. They're still
Well,
new.
you have used your granny charger, right? So I guess that is, it is a cable, it is a way of
Yes.
charging. So, but yeah,
Yes.
you were
Yeah.
talking about the additional stuff you
The
bought. You
additional
haven't
ones.
used it.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah,
but these days, I think for new Tesla owners, you pay for those granny chargers when
I
you get
know. I
yours. I
think
mean, we
that's
were lucky to get it for free.
yeah. I
Um,
think Tesla are doing themselves a disservice, especially in Australia. You definitely need that granny charger, I think, in Australia.
yep.
I know in like Europe and States where fast, supercharging is available and pervasive, then you could probably get away without it. But I think in this market, they should be including that in the car. But I guess people have to spend what's it, $550 or whatever
Yeah.
to purchase
Yep.
it separately.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are the 4 categories that I came up with, and they kind of fit into the trickle charging, AC charging, and fast DC charging. But I think the one with the apartment blocks and workspace definitely needs to be talked about separately, and definitely needs some work.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because not all of us live in a house, and a good number lives in apartment blocks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that needs to be looked at. And yeah, like I said, good on New South Wales government for making that move to support building those chargers in those property complex.
Indeed. All right. Well,
Um,
on that note, maybe. Sorry, you were going to say something, Ron?
No, this is what I was going to say. I was looking at the time here. I think we aimed to finish within 30 minutes. We're actually 8 minutes over, but that's good. It's been a nice chat with you, Toaster. Last time we did this was Friday the 13th last month. And now 3 weeks later, we're here. So it's good to have a nice chat with you. Hopefully our viewers will find this useful, and I guess see you on the next one.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of those technical difficulties at the beginning, hopefully people persevered, and hopefully it wasn't the Starlink that was behind me there. But yeah, no, it's
No, it wasn't you, it was me.
okay, very good. All right, but I guess that wraps up
Oh,
episode 1, because I guess the previous one was the pilot, right, Ron? I think you called it the pilot.
yep, the pilot,
Okay.
because it's the first time being on air. That's why it's called the pilot.
Yeah. All right. Well, I
Cool.
think that wraps up episode 1, and we'll see everybody out there next time.
Yep. See you, everyone.
All right. Cheers,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks for watching. Cheers, Ron.